Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scriptures for May the 21st. Your readings today found you starting 2 Samuel chapter 1 and the first 11 verses of 2 Samuel chapter 2. We see John chapter 12 verses 20 through 50, Psalm 118 19 through 29, and Proverbs chapter 15 27 and 28. Now, normally I give an introduction to a new book of the Bible when we hit to it in 2 Samuel. But as I talked about when I introduced 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel is really part 2 of 1 Samuel. It's an introduction to, or not an introduction, it's a continuation of the story. And it's really just a book that's just been cut in half and has a very clear ending in 1 Samuel with the death of Saul, and now we begin to see David and his leadership and his reign in 2 Samuel. And so there's not really a whole lot to say about it except that 2 Samuel is now going to focus entirely on David, his life, and his family and his legacy on those things. And so you're going to get some stories that are going to be far more detailed, and we're going to learn a lot more about David during this time. But as you can see in the first two chapters, you see David's love for Saul and for Jonathan and his family come out in a very real way. David didn't have to posture or pretend. He deeply loved these people, and as a result of that, David was sensitive to the situation. And so David does not become king of Israel yet. And you'll see that in chapter 2. You'll see that David actually just rules over the people of Judah for a while. And then we'll see some Machiavellian things from someone that was introduced in these passages that we'll talk about tomorrow. But what I really want to do is spend a little bit more time on our reading in John today, because John chapter 12, what we see here in these last 30 verses is we really see the last public teachings of Jesus. Okay, now in other gospels we know that Jesus did the Olivet Discourse. Okay, this would have followed the Olivet Discourse. This would have been kind of John's bow wrapping up Jesus's public ministry. And really Jesus says three things in this last bit of public ministry, starting in verse 23. Now, verse 20 kind of introduces the scene a little bit, but verse 23 is when Jesus really starts to teach. And the first thing he says is that now it's time for me to be glorified. And he talks about the necessity of his death. But he says that this death is going to produce life. That's what it means by producing seeds. Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. That's very similar to other passages in the gospel. Whoever will take up their cross and follow me, for whoever wants to lose their life will save it. Those things. Okay, but Jesus is basically saying that this is necessary, and this is the reason that I have come. Contrary to what everybody else thinks, that I've come to liberate Israel from the Roman rule, I have come for this hour, for this season, for this time that's about to happen. Okay, and then we get a moment where we hear a voice thunder from heaven. This is one of three instances that we see a voice from heaven happen. The first one was Jesus' baptism. The next one was the transfiguration on the mountain. And then this one. And so these are instances where God has affirmed who Jesus is and affirmed what Jesus is going to do. Obviously, people will discount it. They're like, it's just thunder from heaven. But this is very clearly God continuing to glorify Jesus. Then the second thing that Jesus says is that it's now time for judgment on this world. Now the prince of this world will be driven out. Who is the prince of this world? That's Satan. Now Satan is no longer going to have victory over all of sin, over everything. Instead, Jesus is going to defeat sin once and for all. And this is a huge thing. And then finally, the last thing he says is that you're going to have me for a little bit longer. I am the light. This goes back to his I am statements. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the resurrection. Okay, Jesus made these 7 I am statements. And Jesus is encouraging us now to take that light and be children of the light and to carry on that light. And then it says when he had finished speaking, Jesus left and hid himself from them. And then John goes on to kind of wrap things up in a bow in the public ministry. And it talks about the people that did believe and the people that did not believe, even in spite of all of the things that Jesus did. And I think this is an important thing for us to look at and realize that there are going to be a lot of people that are going to reject Jesus, even though they can plainly see for themselves what Jesus has done and the miracles that Jesus has placed in their lives, and yet they choose to ignore that. They choose to de-emphasize it. They choose to ignore the supernatural. Whatever it is, they are choosing to ignore. And he talks about the leaders that would secretly believe Jesus but didn't want to do it because they were worried about human praise. And this is our encouragement, that we need to be proclaiming who Christ is so that we can help others see the eternal life that is found in Jesus through Christ alone, faith alone. All right, that's it for today. We'll talk more tomorrow.